Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some PathOfExile discussion. Today I wanted to talk about breach support that's available on the 3.20 Atlas passive tree. There were some significant changes to the Atlas in 3.20, and the more that we've been able to look at them, the more it's been apparent that these have been very substantial buffs for breach. Breach has gone from having a lot of small nodes that provided a 1% chance to grant a breach, to instead those small nodes providing 4%, and a number of the other nodes have gotten better as well. Breaches feel really quite packed in maps when you encounter them, and they will also drop a lot more splinters than they used to do, and as well as dropping more splinters, they will also drop more and better breachstones than they used to drop. Broadly speaking, everything about breach has been buffed quite a lot. Of course, that has a consequence if you're playing in Trade League. What always happens whenever there's a big buff that makes a mechanic much better, prices for things that are unique to that mechanic do tend to crater. And that's definitely been the case this league. Things like Chaeola breachstones that used to be 160 chaos at this time of the league are going for 30 to 40, and Ulnatol breachstones that might have been 35 last league are now about 20. So things have cratered in price, but it's still the case that breach offers a lot to you, and it's something that you can definitely confidently spend points in if you like the mechanic. I don't feel that it's so strong like essences are that you might feel compelled to run it even if you don't like it, but it is something that definitely has a payoff. To give a bit of an example of changes that have taken place, 3.17 to 3.19, you had about an 18 to 20% chance to get a breach from the passive tree. Now you can get 52% here, and that's without taking any bad nodes. Additionally, 3.20 has added a lot of rusted Scarab availability, which helps even further with forcing more breaches onto your maps. It's going to take you 43 passive points if you want to take all of the useful nodes for breach on the Atlas passive tree. There are a couple that are solo self-found only, we'll cover those in a bit, but I don't recommend that people take these 9 points down here. Additionally, to take all of these points is going to cost you a maximum of 21 passive points for travel nodes. Now, if you're already on the right-hand side of the tree, which will particularly be the case if you're investing in Expedition, Abyss, Harbinger, Harvest, Betrayal, Strongboxes, or Eater of Worlds, then in that case, it's going to cost you less than 21 points of travel nodes, but the worst case scenario is that it costs you 21. A couple of things that need to be clarified mechanics-wise. Flash Breach says that breaches in your maps open and close 50% faster. There's also two small nodes that give you more of this stat, and they can take it up to 66%. These are something that you don't want to take if your character is currently weak. These are something you will pick up as your character gets stronger. They will feel bad early on in progression, they will then feel amazing late in progression. Additionally, 66% faster does not mean that 3 seconds goes as fast as 1 second. Instead, what it means is that 1.66 seconds goes as fast as 1 second. So a breach that would take 30 seconds to completely open then completely retract will instead take 18 seconds if you take all of these nodes. And if you only take Flash Breach and ignore the other two small nodes, then it's going to take 20 seconds. That's the way that faster works in PathOfExile. Now, you don't want to take the nodes for Esh chance, Xoph chance, and Tull chance. The reason for this is that increasing the chance of getting a Tull breach comes at the expense of making it less likely to get a Chaeola breach or an Ulnatol breach. The reason you do want to take Freed from the Flesh is that even though you are slightly decreasing your chances of getting a Chaeola breach when you take Freed from the Flesh to increase your chances of getting an Ulnatol breach, this is not such an overwhelming effect that it ends up being bad overall. Additionally, it's worth knowing that if you're in a white tier map, there is a very strong bias against getting Chaeola present in your map, and a moderately strong bias against getting Ulnatol. The higher the tier of the map that you're running, the more that this bias goes away. It is still always the case that you will see more of Xoph, Esh, and Tull than you will of Ulnatol or Chaeola, but this bias becomes weaker the higher that the tier of map becomes. If you are in white tier maps, you're just getting started and you want to play around with Breach from early on, you might find that Tortured Dreams offers a little bit less than it will at endgame, but certainly once you get to yellow maps and to red maps, you're going to want to have that on your Atlas. The one specific niche use for Corded Thoughts, Flaring Embers, and Unstoppable Avalanche is if there is a specific breach unique your character really wants and you're playing in solo self-found. This will mostly come up with Corded Thoughts. If you're playing a build that is absolutely reliant upon getting the unique claw Hand of Wisdom in action, then in that case you are perfectly happy with sabotaging your chances to get Chaeola stones or sabotaging your chances to get Ulnatol stones in order to get more of those juicy Esh breaches that your character really needs to get running. And that's the same with Tull and the Pandemonious, and also with Xoph and Burning Blood. This is going to be the primary use case for players taking these 9 nodes, and you'd only take 3 of them at a time. But once you've got those items, at that point, it is time to drop those nodes and to spec into Freed from the Flesh or Tortured Dreams or both instead. Especially Freed from the Flesh will be really useful when you want to start running Maven's Invitation the Hidden, which is particularly lucrative, and you'll always find that you're short on Ulnatol Breachstones for that. So having Freed from the Flesh and not having these three will help address some of that inherent bias away from getting these. Finally, Tortured Dreams is really good in Trade League because the second most equipped unique item at the time I'm recording this video on very high level characters is the unique chest Skin of the Lords. This incredibly strong chest piece drops as 2 pieces that both come from Chayula and from Chayula themed monsters. So Tortured Dreams is incredibly good for that purpose as well. And even if you're in solo self-found, whilst you're unlikely to find a Skin of the Lords that's perfect for your current build, you might find one that inspires you to make a new one. So Tortured Dreams, incredibly good. The weakest cluster, in my opinion, is the Far North cluster. This is the Otherworldly Artifacts cluster, and the biggest draw to taking it is actually 13% increased monster density in your breaches. The Otherworldly Artifacts node itself gives you a chance to get breach blessings, albeit a rare chance, and also increases the number of breach-specific unique items that you get dropping. Now, this is something that's quite useful in solo self-found where those breach uniques are in hot demand, but if you're playing in Trade League, this only really adds anything to your Chayula breach, and given that this is a lot of points, it is something you can definitely trim if you don't want to take it. Additionally, these small nodes are something that's skippable as well. 10% increased quantity of breach splinters, that's okay, but it's only from monsters. Clasped hands are really good this league, and a lot more of them spawn than have in the past. Now, one question that comes up a lot, should you spec Wandering Path? The answer is no. This does not work well with Breach. The notable passives are simply too good. If you do spec Wandering Path, you'll notice that my chance to contain breaches goes from 52% to 84%, but that comes at the expense of just so many good nodes. Flash Breach is gone, Power Struggle is gone, Gatekeepers is gone. The Tortured Dreams line ends up being a little bit worse, and that's because it has strong synergy with Gatekeepers, and it also has strong synergy with Within Their Grasp. This means that even though you go from 115% bias towards Chayula all the way up to 140%, which seems like it should be better, you end up losing out on Chayula stones from Within Their Grasp, and you end up coming out negative overall. A couple of quick notes here on Scarab Use. You will reach a point in PathOfExile, especially in Trade League, where you are able to use Scarabs on every single map, and you're easily able to trade for them so that you can sustain them. Once you do reach this point, breach chance nodes remain good at this point because they increase the number of breaches that are present. Additionally, Eve of Invasion goes from being a mediocre but okay node that you mostly take because the nodes leading up to it are so good, into being an absolute monster that adds an average of 0.16 breaches to every map that you run, which is 4 times as good as one of these breach chance nodes, and is considerably better than probing for weaknesses, which adds an average of 0.1. All in all, I think Breach is in a pretty good spot now. Breaches also feel like a lot of fun at the moment, and something I would recommend experimenting with, if you're running a map that has good divination cards local to the tile set, consider using Breach Scarab and a Divination Scarab, and also an Abyss and Expedition Scarab, and spec into those mechanics as well. Those mechanics are all close by on the passive tree, and they'll work well together because all of them add a lot more monsters to the base map, and then that will multiply the effect of your Divination Scarab. Don't necessarily need to do this with top tier Scarabs, you can do it with Rusted Scarabs to get started, and as you can afford to weather an unlucky streak, then you can upgrade to Polished Scarabs, Gilded Scarabs, and potentially even Winged Scarabs eventually. That's all I've got on Breach. May your Varlorbs have interesting results, and I will see you around.